Okay. All right, so today we're going to cover Paradise Lost. We're not going to cover the whole thing because I would love to actually cover this whole thing, but I am not about the frustration that would come from teaching an entire, 200, 300-page epic poem in a class. I feel like there's 12 books to Paradise Lost, and I feel like by the time we got to the second or third one, you guys would be so frustrated. I think the beauty of it would be lost. So we're not going to do that. But what we are going to do, let me arrange this a little different. All right. What we are going to do is look at the beginning of it. Okay? So 524, let's talk about what an epic poem is first. What is an epic poem?
Long narrative story.
Good. Hunter gives me the basic definition for it. It's a long narrative poem. You want to use the word poem, not story. But besides that, you're right on. Besides long narrative poem, there's a few other things that go with it. It typically deals with, and we're going to look at this today, what we would call the invocation of the muse, which is where the speaker is going to basically offer a prayer to, it used to be the ancient Greeks would offer to one of the muses who were in charge of the arts. Now, this is a religious poem, so if we're going to offer it to someone, a prayer to help guide you in your writing, who might he choose to write to? Not an ancient muse. Who would he maybe use? God, particularly the Holy Spirit. He's going to use that right away. We're going to see that right away. Epics also usually include heroic characters. You don't really have that in here unless you really want to make, and I'm telling you this is just whatever, unless you want to make Satan a heroic figure, which, I got to be honest with you, if you look at hero as not the good guy who's going to save the day, if you look at it as a character who in some way does something important or, has special abilities, he kind of fits the bill in this, all right? Satan is your protagonist in this. He's the main character. He is also the person enduring the struggle. That is what a protagonist is. Protagonist does not equal good guy. Depending on what sources you might look at, they might try to say that Jesus, who does show up near the end of this, is the protagonist. That's just somebody trying to avoid being controversial. He's not. Okay? Satan's the protagonist in this story. All right? Well, that's evil. We're reading a story where Satan's the good guy? No, the protagonist is not always a good guy. All right? The protagonist is sometimes someone you sympathize with. And let me tell you, if you read this whole thing, there's a chance that you would look at the devil's situation and say, yeah, that kind of sucks. I feel bad for him. All right? Doesn't mean you agree with him. I feel bad for people a lot of the time. Doesn't mean I agree with their actions. All right? So understand that before you panic. Now, lucky you, the part we're going to read, he doesn't look anything but bad. I think that's carefully chosen by the book. Also, this first section is really one of the better sections of it. It's really well written. All right? Let's look on page 524 first. Let's get some background here. The first half I agree with 100%. The second half I have an issue with. Okay? So I took 2 college classes on Milton. We spent an entire semester studying this. Okay? I disagree with that second paragraph profoundly. All right? But let's look at the first one. It says, Paradise Lost was written as the dust was settling after years of war and turmoil. From 1642 to 1660, the government of England went from a monarchy to a commonwealth, which is a rule by parliament, to a protectorate, a rule by one man, Oliver Cromwell, back to a monarchy. During this 2-decade period, no matter which side a person was on, he or she experienced both defeat and triumph. They're being very nice. This is what caused a lot of early Europeans to come to what would become the U.S. eventually, was you got tired of those swings. All right? If you're pro-monarchy, when there's a king, you're doing good. But then the king gets overthrown and gets his head chopped off, and they put what Parliament or Congress in our situation in charge. Now, all of your neighbors that knew you were pro-monarchy are snitching on you and turning you in. You're going to maybe have your house burned. You have your businesses seized. You may be killed. So now you've got to go into hiding and hope that one day a monarch takes back over, and then you can come back out of hiding until what? Until he's gone again. Or until, if you were a Protestant, until a Catholic was in charge. They hated that. So they came over here because, once upon a time, we believed in the concept of, no matter who's in, it's not like if there's a Republican in office, I'm going to lose my job, but then the Democrats come along and I get to have a job again. That works if you work in government. It shouldn't work if you're a teacher or if you're the grocery store clerk. Okay? I see we're going in a different direction from that these days, but once upon a time, we believed in that concept. A lot of our forefathers initially came over for that reason. So this is that time period. Milton is writing in that period of extreme upheaval. Now, they use that to set up the second paragraph. I do not buy this. Okay? Perhaps Milton wrote Paradise Lost because he sensed that the nation needed an anchor, a literary work that would once again help define and unite a culture. His explanation of God's reason for allowing suffering in the world and the dark, proud figure of the rebel Satan pitted against God in civil war must have led readers to reflect on England's own civil war. No chance. This was a religious work written to try to explain why God allows suffering in the world and why he allows the devil to do what he does. It had nothing to do with secretly being about the Civil War. This is your book trying to, whitewash that out of this. So this is not a religious work. It is most definitely a religious, not a political work. All right, so go ahead and throw that out. They're wrong. I'm going to tell you. I don't care what people say. This is not about that. It's a nice idea. It's not what it's about. All right? Flip over to page 526. Let's get started. This is the actual beginning of this book. Remember, the book is about 300 pages. So this is a pretty extensive one. This isn't even all of book one. But I'm telling you, there are some really good lines in this, and I think it's a beautiful piece of writing. I would imagine in a room of, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 people that 0 of you will agree. All right? But maybe I'll get 1 or 2. Okay? I realize it's old writing. I realize it's a poem. I realize all of those things. But think about the goal this guy's trying to do. I told you, what was his goal? What did I say?
To show why God allows suffering.
To explain why God allows suffering. If anyone needs to read something, that's something you should read about. Because don't lie to yourself. You've questioned that at some point in your life. If you've ever thought, you've been like, why doesn't God just fix this problem? He could easily come down here and deal with all of this. Why does he allow this to keep happening? Okay, well, that was the purpose in this book. Now, I'm not going to say he does the best job of explaining it. All right. At the end of the book, when I read it, I wasn't like, oh, it all makes sense to me now. But I mean, there are some definite, interesting points that are made. Okay. It is fiction. Remember that. So don't panic when we start talking about how the devil thinks. Although I think that there's some inspiration to this for sure. Milton was a very religious person, and I feel like that, he did have a blessing writing this, because I feel like there's some of this in here that is very realistic. I really do. Obviously, when Satan got kicked out of heaven, he thought something. So I feel like the way he presents the devil is very humanizing. I think it's definitely how I could see this going. He's so stuck. It's like we're going to get to a point where the devil's like refusing to repent because he's like, I don't care. I know God's better than me, but I'm still not going to give in. Don't think that you're like, well, who would be that stupid? Every one of you, as stubborn as some of you are, think about how many times you've been wrong and you keep butting your head against it just because you're not going to give in. I mean, it happens all the time. This is very realistic. All right? It's more realistic now than it was back then, in my opinion. All right? I see people doing this constantly. You're wrong. This didn't happen. This isn't true. Well, nope, I'm still going to believe it because Will can't tell me what to think. And you're like, oh, all right. At some point, you just have to give in. So when the devil presents that way, it makes perfect sense because this is the way we are too. And you know what? And this is what I want to hear a little sidebar here. It's pride that does that to you, and pride's a sin. Get over yourselves. Learn to admit when you're wrong and move on. I don't think bad of you if GA comes to me and says, I made a mistake, Mr. Morris, that was wrong of me. Man, I think more of you now than I did before. No, I don't think you're tough and a good person because you keep fighting a losing battle. That's not okay. All right? All right, side note ended. Let's actually look at the poem. You're going to start with the invocation of the muse. That is given in every epic poem. They did it in Beowulf. We're going to do it here. It says, of man's first disobedience and the fruit of that forbidden tree whose mortal taste brought death into the world and all our woe with loss of Eden, till one greater man restore us and regain the blissful seat, sing heavenly muse, that on this secret top of Oreb or of Sinai didst inspire that shepherd who first taught the chosen seed in the beginning how the heavens and earth rose out of chaos. You want to know why these are hard? Because they have long sentences. That's what makes it tough. There's nothing in that was hard. He's just basically saying he's praying to the Holy Spirit to help him tell this story. Often when they were doing the invocation of the muse, they would talk about Mount Olympus, which is where the gods and ancient Greek stuff were. Did you notice which mountains he uses here instead?
Sinai.
Yeah, which is associated with the Christian or Jewish faith. Those. So he's using the right setup here. He says, or if Sion hill delight the more, and Siloa's brook that flowed fast by the oracle of God, I thence invoke thy aid to my adventurous song, that with no middle flight intends to soar above the Aeonian mount, while it pursues things unattempted yet in prose or rhyme. And chiefly thou, O Spirit, that dost prefer before all temples the upright heart and pure, instruct me, For thou knowest, thou from the first was present, and with the mighty wings outspread dove-like, sattest brooding on the vast abyss, and madest it pregnant. What in me is dark illumine, what is low raise and support, that to the height of this great argument I may assert eternal providence and justify the ways of God to men. That's the key line. My goal is to justify God's ways to men. That's what Milton set out to do. Explain God and why he does what he does to us. Well, that's not a small undertaking, is it? I mean, that is a difficult thing to say you're going to do. All right, he says, say first, for heaven hides nothing from the view, nor the deep tract of hell. Say first what cause moved our grandparents in that happy state, favored of heaven so highly, to fall off from their Creator and transgress his will for one restraint, lords of the world beside. He's about to tell us the story. This is really about Adam and Eve. Satan's fall is like background information he has to include. But he really wants to talk about Adam and Eve and what happened to them. That's when he calls them our grandparents. Notice that's not one word. You see it's two separate ones. It's meant grand as in big and then parents, not grandparents like we usually do it. He said, explain why they fell from such an exalted state. He says, who first seduced them to that foul revolt? The infernal serpent, he it was whose guile stirred up with every envy and revenge, deceived the mother of mankind, what time his pride had cast him out from heaven, with all his host of rebel angels, by whose aid, aspiring to set himself in glory above his peers, he trusted to have equaled the Most High, if he opposed, and with ambitious aim against the throne and monarchy of God, raised impious war in heaven and battled proud with vain attempt. He's pointing out who, deceived Adam and Eve. It's particularly Eve he's focusing on here. Then he talks about the devil, who tried to make himself bigger than God and lost. And we're about to see that. We're not going to see the fight. We're going to catch Satan when he's been kicked out of heaven. He's laying in hell, figuring, like, what now? What am I going to do? Which, you got to think that probably actually happened. Can you imagine that moment where he realizes, not only did I lose this fight, but what do I do now? Now, Milton's going to raise some theological questions that your pastor might not like, and that's okay. There are questions that still should be asked. One of the questions being, what if at that point Satan had gone up to God and said, hey, look, that was wrong, I'm sorry. Would he have forgiven him? It's that kind of stuff that, that's a hypothetical. It's not in the Bible. So all we can do is fight over the hypothetical, and that's really comes down to what your opinions are. But the way Satan behaves here, there's no shot for that. We're going to see that right away. All right? He says, him the almighty power hurled headlong, flaming from the ethereal sky with hideous ruin and combustion down to bottomless perdition, there to dwell in adamantine chains and penal fire. Who durst defy the omnipotent to arms? 9 times the space that measures day and night to mortal men, he with his horrid crew lay vanquished, rolling in the fiery gulf, confounded though immortal. But his doom reserved him to more wrath, for now the thought both of lost happiness and lasting pain torments him. Round he throws his baleful eyes that witness huge affliction and dismay, mixed with obdurate pride and steadfast hate. So he's been down here for a while, and he's looking around and he's realizing all the stuff he's lost. I gave up that for this. And he's, instead of being repentant and saying, I shouldn't have done that, what do you think his response is? He gets angry. Okay? That's the devil. That's a cosmic thing that doesn't deal with us individually. Does it not? How many times have you made a mistake and you get mad at your parents? Or you get mad at the teacher because you did something wrong? Instead of coming up and saying, hey, I'm sorry about that. I have to deal with it with some of my classes. Y'all know those little daily grades? I have kids in 4th period who get like 40s. And instead of coming up to me and saying, hey, what did I do wrong, which I'm very clear about, it's just, Mr. Moore's stupid. I can't stand his class. Why didn't he pay attention? He just doesn't like me. I don't have a problem with any of you. But that's the price for what you do. It's not me, it's the problem. Bella's got the same rules. All right? So, this is common. What he does with Satan is makes him very much like us. Which that's on purpose for us to see how we're not as far away from this as we think. I don't think Satan's an idiot for what he did, really, because we are too. Pride's an awful thing. And it destroys people. It says, at once as far as angels can, he views the dismal situation, waste and wild, a dungeon horrible on all sides round as one great furnace flamed. Yet from those flames no light, but rather darkness visible. Think about that. He's saying hell has fire in it. If I've got all the lights off in my house and my fireplace is going, I can see what's in my room. Is that what happens down there? No, it's dark. The flames aren't giving off light. They're there just for being painful. It served only to discover sights of woe. Now he can see, but he's just seeing suffering. regions of sorrow, doleful shades where peace and rest can never dwell. Hope never comes, it comes to all, but torture without end still urges in a fiery deluge, fed with ever-burning sulfur, unconsumed. You can notice how a lot of our imagery of heaven is definitely, hell, God, that was wrong. Imagery of hell is coming from this. It doesn't mean he's wrong. I don't think he is. But, the Bible's not as clear about this as this is. It mentions it. It mentions fire. It mentions things like this. But Milton took it and ran with it and really painted the picture for you. He says, such place eternal justice hath prepared for these rebellious here, their prison ordained in utter darkness, and their portion set as far removed from God in the light of heaven as from the center thrice to the utmost pole. Not only is hell a place of suffering, and this is one of the key elements here, what else does he say is distinct about it? Look at the very top of page 528.
Talking about it's just complete dark, or are you talking about the part?
The next part.
It's like you're farthest away from God.
Yeah,
Light.
as far away from God and heaven as possible. Because again, it would be like if you had lived in this beautiful mansion down on Old Shell and you got kicked out of it and they moved you to a trailer out in Theodore. It's not just that now I live in a a place I'm not happy. You're so far away from your friends, from the people that you used to be around. Everything that used to be like looking out your window and it's beautiful. Now you're looking out the window and meth trailer. So that's where they've landed. That's just as bad as the suffering. To know how far they've fallen. It says, oh, how unlike the place from whence they fell. There the companions of his fall, overwhelmed with floods and whirlwinds of tempestuous fire, he soon discerns, and weltering by his side, one next him in power and next in crime, long after known in Palestine and named Beelzebub, to whom the archenemy and thence in heaven called Satan, with bold words breaking the horrid silence, thus began. So Satan looks over at one of the other demons. Which demon? Beelzebub, who's mentioned in the Bible. He's often like another name for Satan, but not in Paradise Lost. Paradise Lost has actual different demons. You run into several of them. Some of them are in the Bible. Some of them are not. Some of them are just tradition, lore-based demons. But Beelzebub he talks to. It's like his second in command. And this is the devil talking. Guys, I filmed this video twice this morning and got confused because I couldn't remember who was talking because I struggle sometimes with the poetic language too. But this is Satan talking. He says, if thou beest he, but oh, how fallen, how changed from him who in the happy realms of light, clothed with transcendent brightness and did outshine myriads though bright. If he whom mutual league, united thoughts and counsels, equal hope and hazard in the glorious enterprise, joined with me once, now misery hath joined in equal ruin, into what pit thou seest, from what height fallen, so much the stronger proved he with his thunder, until then who knew the force of those dire arms? Now, they're pointing to how much they look different, which you would expect. I wouldn't think that this picture we have here of the devil on page 528 is what he looked like in heaven. All right? I don't know, but I'm guessing that, you wouldn't figure scary demon-looking things up there. Although, I don't know, some of the descriptions of angels in the Bible are pretty scary, okay? But he's noticing that Beelzebub looks really different. He's figuring he does too. And then they point out, who knew God was as strong as he was? You get this image that they thought, hey, I'm just as good as him. And then when they tried and God actually tried back, they got just crushed. And the devil realizes that. And that's important that we realize that the devil at this point realizes God's better and stronger than me. I can't stand up to him. You would think most people at that point would give in and say, okay, my fault, I made a mistake. That's not what he does. He says, yet not for those, nor what the potent victor in his rage can else inflict, do I repent or change. Though changed in outward luster, that fixed mind and high disdain from sense of injured merit that with the mightiest rose me to contend, and to the fierce contention brought along innumerable force of spirits, armed that durst dislike his reign, and me preferring his utmost power, with adverse power opposed in dubious battle on the plains of heaven, and shook his throne. He points out here, I don't care what else he can do to me, I'm not repenting. I'm not. I'm mad about what happened, and I'm not going to say I'm sorry. I don't care what else can he do? That's the point he's making. I'm already in hell. What's the next step? Super hell? What else are you going to do to me? It says, what though the field be lost? All is not lost. The unconquerable will and study of revenge, immoral hate, and courage never to submit or yield, and what is else not to be overcome. He points out, he can't do anything else to me, and I can't win, but you know what I can do? Cause him trouble at every step possible. I'm going to be a thorn in his side. I'm going to cause problem. Whatever he wants done, I'm going to oppose it. Not because I'm going to win, but because I want to make him understand how mad I am. It's a pouting baby who didn't get their way And mom and dad wanted to go to some boring history thing for vacation, and you wanted to go to Disney World. So you end up going to the boring history thing, and you sit in the back with your arms crossed, pouting. Every time your parents talk to you, you're like, no, yes. And you think that's really going to impact them. And in the end, it's not. It just causes you to look bad, but, it makes us feel better maybe. You're not going to win. Your parents aren't going to get halfway to Williamsburg or whatever and decide, okay, we'll go to Disney World since Emma's pouting and mad at us. You're still going to lose.
I mean, some people, some kids can get their way like that.
Gosh, what's that like?
It's actually gonna be
That's kind of like that one right there.
Oh,
that one.
I'm telling you right now, if I did it, my mom would be like, oh, you don't like that? I'm going to pick an even more boring thing to take you to.
See, my parents always say, okay, this is our last vacation. We're not taking any more.
Yeah,
trips.
Yeah.
we go on another
And then we like,
Well, at least y'all get them. My kids, you know what vacations they get? None. We don't go anywhere. My wife occasionally will take them places. I take that back. I don't go on vacation. So, but anyway, that's kind of the devil's thought here. Do you think he thinks he's going to somehow prove his point and God's going to change his mind? Not at all. He knows he's lost. But you know what? It doesn't matter. I'm going to just be a jerk because I can be a jerk. And that's what I'm going to do. All right? He says, we did that part. He says, that glory never shall his wrath or might extort from me. He's like, I don't care how much he pushes me, he's never going to get me to bow or to say, I'm sorry. To bow and sue for grace with suppliant knee and deify his power, who from the terror of this arm so late doubted his empire, that were so low indeed, that were an ignominy and shame beneath this downfall. Since by fate the strength of gods and this imperial substance cannot fail, since through experience of this great event in arms not worse, in foresight much advanced, we may with more successful hope resolve to wage by force or guile eternal war, irreconcilable to our grand foe, who now triumphs and in the excess of joy, sole reigning, holds the tyranny of heaven. He's like, we are going to do everything we can to war forever against him. He's got to convince these rest of these demons to follow him, because look, he convinced them to all turn against God, and how'd that turn out for him? Not so well. So now the idea here is, okay, well, this is where we are. We find ourselves in the situations we lost. But what we can do is keep going. Let's just not give up. Let's just keep pushing and see what damage we can cause. It said, so spake the apostate angel, though in pain, vaunting aloud but racked with deep despair. And him thus answered soon his bold compeer. So Beelzebub is responding. O prince, O chief of many throned powers, who that led the embattled seraphim to war, under thy conduct, and in dreadful deeds fearless, endangered heaven's perpetual king, and put to proof his high supremacy, whether upheld by strength or chance or fate. I love how much these guys think they actually did something, too. Another really human quality. It's like, with football. You got a team that, you just got stomped 76-3, and you're like, we had them in the first quarter. You're doing really well. No, you didn't. You didn't. You weren't even close. They weren't scared of you for a second. That team we played in basketball last night. Yeah, right. Y'all had a shot when it was 0-0. When I left at first quarter, it was 16-2. If you ever thought you had a shot, it wasn't going to happen.
32-5.
Is that what it ended up being?
No, it was 35 at one point. It was I think it was 21-49.
Yeah, and that's because people just were playing around at that point. Because honestly, you could have kept that team to under double digits with no trouble. All right, so that's kind of this. These guys think they had a chance, but they're just telling themselves that because it makes you feel better. All right, it's me every year, Auburn and Alabama playing. Like, yeah, we got a good shot. After we're down by 3 touchdowns, I'm like, we can still come back. Not gonna happen. All right. Too well, thank you. Too well I see and rue this dire event, that with sad overthrow and foul defeat hath lost us heaven, and all this mighty host in horrible destruction laid thus low. As far as gods and heavenly essences can perish, for the mind and spirit remains invincible, and the vigor soon returns, though all our glory extinct and happy state here swallowed up in endless misery. He points out something that makes this extra bad for them. They can't die. So this is going to be miserable and painful, but eventually we're going to recover, and guess what? We're still going to be stuck here. This is eternity for us. It says, but what if he conquer whom I now of force believe almighty, since no less than such could have overpowered such forces as ours? Look, Beelzebub gets it. He's like, I used to not think he was that tough, but he whooped our butts, so yeah, he's pretty awesome. It says, what could he have left us this, our spirit and strength entire, strongly to suffer and support our pains, that we may so suffice his vengeful ire, or do him mightier service as his thralls by right of war? Whatever his business be, here in the heart of hell to work in fire or do his errands in the gloomy deep. Beelzebub's asking why God didn't just end them. It's like, why is he making us stay alive? Is it to punish us? Does he have a plan for us? He's kind of confused as to why they're not just all dead. What can it then avail, though yet we feel strength undiminished or eternal being to undergo eternal...
Excuse me, Mr. Morris.
Yes, ma'am.
May we please have Austin Allison to the conference room to see Miss Richardson?
Yes, ma'am. He's on the way.
Thank you.
Man, don't panic until you know what it's about. Yes, sir.
Oh, I know
It's
it's
never
about.
anything good.
Oh, you know? Okay, well then panic. All right.
Well, I don't know. I just got a good feeling.
Ah. All right. He says, he's basically asking, what is the purpose of us still being down here? You know, God could easily have just killed them all, wiped them out, and made them cease to exist. He's like, what is the purpose in eternal punishment?
They gotta suffer.
Right, and you got to think that this would be a question that, again, if you get into deep theological questions with people, this is one of those questions that, you know, is a valid question.
Death is easy.
Well, but the thing is that eternal punishment, at some point, if Madison's like Hitler, at some point she served her penance. I mean, why is she going to keep being punished?
Like Madison.
Okay? So that's the question that he's masking, that question that people would have asked even back then behind the demons. Okay? Because, you know, you would think, you know, being a bad person, like, you know, I just never accepted Jesus, let's say, and you end up in hell, versus I literally tried to fight God, are two very different things. So it's a valid question, and that's what really Milton's trying to do. And we don't get the answer to that in this section, but Milton's trying to present that question through the eyes of these demons, okay? It says, whereto with speedy words the archfiend replied. So now Satan's going to respond to him. It says, fallen cherub, to be weak is miserable, doing or suffering, but of this be sure. To do aught good never will be our task, but ever to do ill our sole delight. Listen to what the devil, you know, like I said, the devil, you somewhat get sympathy for him at some point. Not here. What did he just say he was going to do?
He's just talking about how he's never gonna do any good.
Right. If it's good, I'm going to do the opposite. Everything I do from here on out is to cause God problems. As being the contrary to his high will whom we resist. If then his providence out of our evil seek to bring forth good, our labor must be to pervert that end. Now I love this. He says if God's going to use us in our bad effort to try to bring good out of it, then we've got to find some way to stop him. Of course, if you know your Bible, you know that's exactly what he tried to do and what happened. He fails miserably down the road. So did he quit? What are we talking about where he failed it? What are we talking about?
First off, just the fall.
Well, he pulled that off.
Second off,
Where does he fail when he's trying to? He thinks his bad is going to, he's going to stop God's plan, and he actually was the way it was carried out. Like, oops.
when they were trying to crucify.
That's it. Jesus' crucifixion. I mean, the devil thought he had it together, and then he finds out later, oh crap, I actually did exactly what he wanted me to do. Okay, so God's not going to let you, mess up his plans, right? So he thinks he's going to pull that off here, and he thinks he won, and he's going to, even in this book, when Adam and Eve, when he tempts them, he's like, haha, your special little, pet monkeys you have over here you think are so great, I messed them up. And then we're going to see Jesus show up at a later point. He's going to realize, this isn't going to work, no matter how hard I try. But he doesn't stop. That's the key. That happened 2,000 years ago. Has he quit? Did he say, okay, I'm going to quit being mean? No, okay. God may use it, but I'm still going to do it. Because pride is an awful thing. All right? Pride is a terrible thing, and it really makes us just idiots. Like, I don't care. I don't care. I'm going to keep doing it. I'm going to keep doing it because I'm right. But you're not. You're not. You're not even. You're doing more damage to yourself than you think you are. But we're going to keep doing it. He says, which oft times may succeed, so as perhaps shall grieve him, if I fail not and disturb his inmost counsels from their destined aim. But see, the angry victor hath recalled his ministers of vengeance in pursuit back to the gates of heaven. The sulphurous hall shot after us in storm o'erblown hath laid the fiery surge that from the precipice of heaven received us falling, and the thunder. So he points out that the angels God sent to make sure they were down there have left. So it's just them there now. So now they can have their little meeting and decide what they're going to do. He couldn't do it before because the other angels might knock him around a little. Winged and with red lightning and impetuous rage, perhaps hath spent his shafts and ceases now to bellow through the vast and boundless deep. Let us not slip the occasion, whether scorn or satiate fury yield it from our foe. Seest thou yon dreary plain, forlorn and wild, the seat of desolation, void of light, save what the glimmering of these livid flames casts pale and dreadful? Thither let us tend from off the tossing of these fiery waves. There rest, if any can harbor there, and reassembling our afflicted powers, consult how we may henceforth most offend our enemy, our own loss, how to repair, how to overcome this dire calamity. So like they find this island in the middle of a boiling lake, which I guess they have ignored that and just been laying here in the fire for days and days. He's like, let's go over there and let's meet and figure out what we can do to really come after. And you remember when he says our enemy, they're talking that we're inverted now. Our enemy is God, is what he's talking about. What reinforcements we may gain from hope, if not what resolution from despair. It says, thus Satan, talking to his nearest mate, with head uplift above the wave and eyes that sparkling blazed, his other parts besides, prone on the flood, extended long and large, lay floating many a rood, in bulk as huge as whom the fables name of monstrous size, Titanian or earthborn, that warred on Jove, Briareus or Typhon, whom the den by ancient Tarsus held, or that sea beast, Leviathan, which God of all his works created, hugest, that swims in the ocean stream. Him haply slumbering on the Norway foam, the pilot of some small night-foundered skiff, deeming some island oft as seamen tell, with fixed anchor in his scaly rind, moors by his side under the lee, while night invests the sea and wish morn delays. It's a really fancy way of saying he is huge. Satan's a big guy. All right? So stretched out huge in length, the archfiend lay chained on the burning lake, nor ever thence had risen or heaved his head, but that the will and high permission of all ruling heaven left him at large to his own dark designs, that with reiterated crimes he might heap on himself damnation, while he saw evil to others, and enraged might see how all his malice served but to bring forth infinite goodness, grace and mercy shown on man by him, seduced but on himself, treble confusion, wrath, and vengeance poured. Now that huge section is really important. They're saying basically that the only reason Satan's even able to get up off of this lake where he's chained is why?
It's massive.
Well, no, I mean, that's not even it. But they did put that first. Why? It's because God lets him.
Oh.
The only reason he's able even to get up is God allows it. And then they point out why God allows it. Because what they're going to do is he's going to frustrate him even more by showing him that you don't dictate my plans. You know, you can try as much as you want to stop something. It's not going to. In fact, I'll use you to carry it out. You know, which is going to frustrate him even more.
But that's why God allows him.
Yeah, that's what Milton's telling us. This is not a theological text by any stretch, but
Yeah,
it makes sense.
Why does he start talking about like Greek mythology and like Titans and stuff like
Because
that?
it's a poem, and we have to use all those for fancy, smart people who are listening. I mean, really, that's all I can think of. It just, shows how smart Milton is, I guess. I don't know what half of those people were. I got Jove's Zeus.
I just knew it just said those were Titans.
Yeah, the Titans are the people that came before the gods. So, they're huge. So, all right. Will, you're in charge. Where did I leave off?
You left off after, where's the little two dots? Crap. After delay, so it's on so stretched out huge. Oh, wait, no.
No, we're farther now.
I forgot you finished that
Oh,
part.
I got a forthwith. Yeah. Forthwith upright he rears from off the pool, his mighty stature, it's okay. On each hand the flames driven backward slope their pointing spires, and rolled in billows leave in the midst a horrid veil. Then with expanded wings he steers his flight aloft, incumbent on the dusky air, that felt unusual weight, till on dry land he lights, as if it were land that burned with solid, as the lake with liquid fire. And such appeared in hue, as when the force of subterranean wind transports a hill torn from Pelorus, the shattered side of thundering Etna, whose combustible and fueled entrails, thence conceiving fire, sublimed with mineral fury, aid the winds and leave a singed bottom all involved of unblessed feet. Basically, he flew to the island. Okay, he's about to form their castle, which it may be called Pandemonium here. I'm not positive. I don't remember. Him followed his next mate, both glorying to have escaped the Stygian flood as gods. Notice the gods there is lowercase because they're not God. And by their own recovered strength, not by the sufferance of supernal power. Is this the region, this the soil, this clime, said then the lost archangel, then this seat that we must change for heaven, this mournful gloom for that celestial light? Be it so, since he who is now sovereign can dispose and bid what shall be right. Farthest from him is best, whom reason hath equaled, force hath made supreme above his equals. So now the devil's like, I'm glad we're far away from him. Justifying the fact that you're really not, but, you're going to lie about it. Farewell, happy fields where joy forever dwells. Hail, horrors. Hail, infernal world, and thou profoundest hell, receive thy new possessor, one who brings a mind not to be changed by place and time. This is an important line. The mind is its own place, and in itself can make a heaven of hell and a hell of heaven. That is a really famous line, okay? He's basically pointing out that, you decide what is heaven or hell. And he's like, I'm going to treat hell like it's my own personal heaven. Now, good job lying to yourself, buddy. Keep it up. I'm going to convince myself that my meth trailer in Theodore is just as nice as my fancy house on Old Shell. You can pretend, or you're going to have to lie to yourself a lot. All right? What matters where if I still be the same and what I should be, all but less than he whom thunder hath made greater. Here at least we shall be free. The Almighty hath not built here for his envy, will not drive us hence. Here we may reign secure, and in my choice, to reign is worth ambition, though in hell. Famous line here, better to reign in hell than serve in heaven. Wow, what a horrible thing to say. What did he just point out?
So you'd rather have rain all over hell than to serve
Yeah.
anybody in heaven.
It's like, at least I'm king here. He can't tell me what to do here. I get to rule my little garbage kingdom here. I'll show them. It says, but wherefore let then our faithful friends, the associates and co-partners of our loss, lie thus astonished on the oblivious pool, and call them not to share with us their part in this unhappy mansion, or once more with rallied arms to try what may be yet regained in heaven, or what more lost in hell. It's like, hey, best choice, we somehow win, and we get heaven back. Or worst case, what? We're going to be in the same situation, so let's go. So here's the thing with the way he presents the devil. He's presented just like every stubborn human being that ever existed. You understand that? This is not like just this supernatural figure that behaves this way. I've given you multiple examples of how we behave the exact same way today. And you look at this and you see how stupid it is. You think it's not when you do it? It's just as stupid. All right? There is nothing wrong or weak about saying, I made a mistake. There's nothing wrong with saying, I'm wrong. There's nothing wrong with saying, hey, I'm sorry. But I hate to use this example because I'm not asking for your examples of how it happened in your life. But as a parent, I'm not always good about that, and that's the issue. All right, Julie can come up to me and say, hey, Mr. Morse, I'm sorry about that because, I'm the teacher and she's a student. It's a lot harder to go the opposite direction with that. For me to be, as a teacher, go up and say, hey, I'm sorry to a student, But that's not the situation the devil even finds himself in. He's not superior to God. He's been proven he's not. So it's even dumber that he just can't go and say, hey, I made a mistake. I don't know if God forgives him or not. I don't know how that works. I don't know the cosmology of that. But I'm just saying, he obviously isn't even going to find out himself. He's just like, you know what? I know we're beat. I know he's stronger than me. And you know what? I'm still going to pick every little thing I can to mess with him. I just want to make his life difficult. And that just shows a level of, stupidity and stubbornness and, for lack of a better term, evil. And that's kind of what we get with this. Now, as you get into this, you see more and more about the devil's mentality. And what Milton tries to show us is the devil became this way because he saw God showing favor to humans. And, when you look at what angels can do versus what I can do, I'm going to die from eating too much sugar. That's not really impressive. If you're an angel that can do all the things the angels could do and God likes me better, you can understand him being like, be like if you're a straight A student, star athlete, got a scholarship, full scholarship to Harvard, and your brother's a drug addict. And your parents are like all talking to him how great he is. And they always brag about him, and you're sitting there like, are you kidding? That's how this is going to go? Shh. That's kind of, would you be mad if that was the case? Yeah, well, so was he. So, what Milton's really doing is showing us through what happens to the devil that, we're really susceptible to this. And we really need to watch ourselves and be careful because what happened to him happens to us daily. All right? At the end of the day, it's not about, God showed more attention to the humans than he did me. Don't be such a needy thing. That's not the way to be. So if you're the best and your parents show more attention to your brother, maybe he needs more. Or maybe he doesn't. It doesn't matter. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. You be you and you don't worry about that. But the devil was, it was pride. You know, I want to be patted on the back and told how special I am. And that was the issue he ran into. And you know what? We're not any different. That's sin. That's what it does to us. Okay? All right, that's a good stopping spot. So.